Hi, welcome to Bite Size Buddhism. Today I'm going to read an excerpt from Phra Ajahn Lee's teachings, his Dharma talks. So Phra Ajahn Lee was a very famous Thai forest meditation monk. He was known to have some psychic powers. He was able to stop a bus with his concentration. That's one of the stories. And he died at a young age, I think in his early 50s, of a massive heart attack. He practiced very diligently and devotedly on the Buddhist path to liberation of the mind. So liberation of the mind consists of contemplating death. Why is that so? Because there's another famous Thai forest meditation teacher called Ajahn. He always say, die before you die. Otherwise, death will actually be quite painful, suffering. So Buddhism is an art of letting go of what? The ego. And actually, I think I've read some books on Christian contemplation by mostly the Catholic monastic order. So they too said that, the practice is to let the ego die so that they can be in union with God. And in Hinduism, right, the word in union with God, in union itself is called yoga. So I find that all contemplative practices of all religions lead to the same thing. When we are actually contemplative and discerning enough, then perhaps we will stop criticizing each other's religion and find peace in the world. So anyway, without much further ado, I'll start reading this excerpt from Ajahn Lee on contemplation of death. So he said, every human being falls under the same conditions. In the beginning we're born, then in the middle we change, and in the end we fall apart and die. Death is something no one aspires to, and yet no one can escape it. We all have death at the end of our path. Thinking about death gives rise both to benefits and to harm. For short-sighted people, it's harmful because it makes them so depressed and discouraged that they don't want to do any good in the world. In other words, all they see is the part that dies. They don't see the part that doesn't die. Actually, there are two parts to every person: the part that can die and the part that doesn't die. For example, the nature of the body is to keep changing until it falls apart. You can say that it dies, and you can say that it doesn't. The word dies applies to the fact that the person disappears from his or her friends and relatives, but the elements of the body simply go back to their original form. The earth returns to being earth, the water to water, the fire to fire, and wind to wind. It's like a cube of ice. If you keep the ice long enough, let it melt, it will soon return to its original condition of being water. So I love this analogy, right? We feel so separated from each other as solid ice cubes, but when death comes, we melt away. We're just one, which is the mind. So you can say that the body dies, you can say that it doesn't die. Simply that it doesn't maintain the same form that it had, right? The body goes back to its respective elements. According to the conventions of the world, this is called death. But wise people don't see death as anything strange or out of the ordinary. The only question is whether death is accompanied by merit or not. Merit, M-E-R-I-T. This brings us to the mind that used to stay with the body. This is the important part because the mind doesn't die. So the mind here refers to consciousness. So the English language is a bit confusing. Right? In the Buddhist term, it's called the citta or bodhicitta, awakened mind of unconditioned love. You can call that even an open mind. Okay, open awakened mind, bodhicitta, or citta itself, mind. Okay, or I think the more accurate word is consciousness or awareness. Okay, so the mind simply changes in line with the way good and evil arrange things for it. In other words, they arrange the level of the mind, the place where it takes rebirth. If you do good, you have to go to a good destination. If you do evil, you have to go to an evil or a bad destination. If you develop goodness to the ultimate degree, so that you can let go of good and evil, the mind will become changeless. And when the mind is changeless, it's also called deathless. But most of us can't conceive of the truth. We tend to overlook it, so that we never reach the deathless. This is because of our own stupidity and lack of discernment. Our ignorance hides the truth from us. The nature of the mind is very subtle. You can't see it with your eyes. Some people say it doesn't exist, which is why people who don't consider things carefully say that death is followed by annihilation. We can make a comparison with the fire element in the air. The mind is like the fire element. The body is like a lit candle. When the candle runs out of its wax and wick, the fire has to go out. But when the fire goes out, that doesn't mean that no fire is left in the world. We are able to light another candle because of the fire element still there throughout the air. That's the way it is with us. When the body falls apart, the mind gives rise to a new level of being for itself, as long as it still has the fuel of ignorance, craving and clinging. This is why the Buddha taught his disciples not to be heedless. Heedless means to be careless, to be not mindful, not discerning, non-contemplative, not paying attention. This is heedless. But to develop as much merit and skillfulness as possible. Okay, so of course merit skillfulness means you learn to train your attention, pay attention to your experience, pay attention, observe, contemplate, discern. Okay, so for merit and skillfulness are what bring happiness both in this world and in the next world. This is in line with the sayings. The accumulation of merit brings well-being. Merit brings well-being at the end of life, and merit is what establishes living beings in the next life. The word merit here means the happiness or well-being that results from doing good. The good we can do comes in many forms, but in short, there are two kinds. The merit that acts as a cause, meaning the good we have to do as an action, and the merit that acts as a result, which is the happiness we experience coming from our goodness by thought, speech and action. So clearly, merit here, many people think that merit is a way of accumulating spiritual wealth. So instead of accumulating financial wealth, we accumulate spiritual wealth. It becomes spiritual materialism, right? You go to offer a lot of incense paper, candles at the temple, asking for good luck, asking for 4D numbers, donate things, hoping to get long life. This is spiritual materialism. Okay, so merit is not really spiritual materialism. To understand merit is to understand your world of experience. See, when the mind is attracted to experiences such as joy, gratitude, love, generosity, it would naturally be drawn to doing things that brings forth the repeat of such experiences. You'll naturally be drawn to people who are of the same quality, what they call resonance. Birds of a feather flock together, So no merit or little merit means, you enjoy experiencing negative emotions. You might find it very strange why I say that. Why would people enjoy experiencing negative emotions? It's not that they enjoy it, but because they are not seeing, again, they are heedless, ignorant and heedlessness. They do not see the experience of negativity, what it causes to their minds, their consciousness, whether it's heavy, light, whether it causes the heart to close or to open. Okay, and the kinds of things and people they're drawn to or who are drawn to them. And strangely, I must tell you, I observe many people, including myself, before I actually practice paying attention, being contemplative, practicing mindfulness. I thought I was a good person. I can tell you that I don't think so. I wasn't a bad person, but I was a very naive person who was accumulating a lot of negative experiences without knowing it. I was very innocent and naive. I'm not saying that it's an excuse, okay? But I'm grateful for having suffered, for being ignorant and naive, and because they taught me, okay, to look inside myself, to start to pay attention, to observe, and to be mindful. Because without bumming my head against the wall into different so many places, I wouldn't bother looking within myself. So I'm grateful for those things. So merit is an experience, is an effect, and the cause of it is our intention. Yeah. So we experience things from our action. Action comes from thinking. Thinking comes from intention. And intention in Buddhism is called karma. What we intend either causes a heavy weight in our heart, a closed heart, or an open heart of intention of love and generosity and giving attention to another person besides ourselves, besides pleasing ourselves. Okay, so that is karma. So of course the end of karma is to detach. Detach is not to be indifferent. Detachment is a kind of wisdom that comes with love and compassion and knowingness. It is not being apathetic or indifferent. It's not like that at all. Okay, so I find that some words used can cause a lot of misunderstanding when we don't understand the deeper practices of the Buddhist spiritual path and meditation. So I chose to talk about death contemplation because I find that death contemplation is a very important meditation. Many people meditate with their breath, which is not wrong. Okay, so see, many people start with breath meditation because it's the so-called easiest. For me, it wasn't the easiest. For some people it is, because it's a very general, neutral thing. You have no feelings, you have no like or dislike towards your breath. Therefore, as an object of meditation, it is very neutral, so it's good, right? We don't recommend, usually meditation, people don't recommend that you have high desire for that object, like you meditate on somebody you have a crush on. No way, then you have no meditation, because meditation is training attention. If you are too involved in thinking about somebody you have an infatuation on, who is your object of meditation, you're not going to pay attention to attention. You're going to pay attention to the object. So many people misunderstand that the breath itself is the key to your meditation. No, actually what you're doing is training your attention itself, okay, by bringing your attention to the breath. The breath is just something, a tool to train your attention. And this is just first stage of meditation. You're not really meditating yet. It's just first stage. The second stage of meditation is called mindfulness. Okay, again, it's just a preliminary exercise. Mindfulness is when you no longer are hinged up on just looking at your breath. Your attention begins to widen, and you begin to be able to not choose the object of your attention. It's what some people call choiceless awareness. Some people hate the word choiceless awareness. They like open awareness. And I think because it's the ego at play here. The ego likes to choose, likes to be in control. So I prefer to use the word choiceless awareness because, as I shared earlier, to me, all meditation, all spiritual path, contemplative path, is the path to letting go of the ego. So I love Buddhism because the Buddha said the ego is made up of identification with the body, identification with feelings, identification with memories, identification with mental thought formations, identification with the consciousness of I who owns all of these things, who identifies with all of these things as me, I, and myself. So this is ego, and I find it so beautifully explained by the Buddha, and that's why I'm on the Buddhist path. Okay, because I don't find such succinct, such wonderful explanation of the ego as given by the Buddha. So the ego is not one thing. Personalities is made out of these 5 aggregates, piled up together into a heap. They are conditioned, they are compounded into I, me, and mine, easily separated as well. So, but despite saying this, all spiritual path will lead you to the deathless. Okay, Tenzin Palmo, a well-known Tibetan Buddhist nun, she said that how is it possible that all spiritual path will lead you to this deathless that is within you, right? Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. The deathless is within you. It's inside you, like space that pervades the outside as well as inside. Fire is pervading the outside as well as inside. It's not separate just because you have a body. There's fire working inside your body and outside in the air. Okay, so she said that why all spiritual path will lead to the deathless is because that is our innate beingness. Sooner or later, we will find a way home to ourselves. And that's why all spiritual path leads there. And whichever spiritual path you take will lead you there. For whichever path you're most comfortable with now, resonates with you now, that's the one you take in this life. Okay, so you don't need to believe that there is rebirth. Although as a Buddhist, it will really help you with your practices. But even if you don't believe in rebirth, okay, doing merit of good things, right? Doing good deeds, experiencing goodness, experiencing this goodness arising from your heart itself is a happy life. Even if you don't believe in rebirth. And just in case, when you die and there's rebirth, you're like, hit the jackpot. Okay? Because you have done what's required for a good rebirth. So there's another teacher, he's not well known, he's a layman who was enlightened. I admire him. His name is Edward Salim Michael. He said this, okay? So obviously, most of us are living in a life where it's really just pleasing ourselves, finding things to excite ourselves, going for holidays, eating great food. When we're stressful, go and exercise, eat wonderful food, put it on Instagram, share everyone. Everyone will like, because that's how we live. No one ever questioned, is there an experience beyond having sex, having parties, eating good food, talking about politics, talking about life, shopping, traveling, having sex, being married, having children, and then you die, right? Seldom do people ask such questions. Very seldom, and not many people do. I happened to ask these questions when I was quite young, and I realized that it's hard to get into such conversations with people because not many people are interested in such questions. And I can tell you from United States, where I've been for 5 weeks to practice with some nuns, the moment I left the monastery, I heard some Americans chatting, just talking about what to do with their holiday, where they should go, their experiences of the holiday, the great food they had. And then I came back to Singapore, and then I heard my auntie telling me, oh, the great experiences she had on her latest trip, the great food she had, wonderful taste, but the taste in the mouth, the food, the shopping she did. There's actually no difference in the conversation all the way from America, 16 hours flight back to Singapore is the same thing. To be honest, I really wish I can pay attention to all these things, but after a while, they're just very repetitive. Why? Because the ego itself is repetitive. The egoic mind cannot think outside of the box. It's just a repetitive soap opera playing the same story over and over again. You can watch this on the TV show, How innovative can the drama, the TV films be? Because they're just a replay of the egoic mind's stories again and again and again. Okay, so so back to Edward Salim Michael. He said that, so of course all of us, some of us, not all of us, who notice these things, question, is there a divinity out there? Is there something beyond this mundane cyclic existence that repeats itself in this egoic mind non-stop without a break? So apparently there is, right? As I shared earlier, Jesus said kingdom of God is not in the skies. If not, the birds will reach there first. It's not in the sea, otherwise the fish will reach there first. But it rests in your heart. Okay, and the body of Christ means that the kingdom of God can be found in this phantom long body. That's what the Buddha said. The world exists in this phantom long body. Okay, so I'm not gonna argue whether I'm right or wrong. Okay, those who resonate, take it. Those who don't resonate with it, just listen and debate with yourself, like what I do. When some things I'm not sure of, I listen. I don't accept it, nor do I reject it. I think this is the best way to contemplate, to discern what is truth. And that's what the Buddha taught us as well. So Edward Salim Michael said that upon death, there will be a great light that will greet us. And you can read this in the Tibetan Book of the Dying. And most of us who are not open, we have things to hide, okay? We have said some bad things about people. We cannot tell them in their face. We have lied about some things. We would you be able to let someone listen in to your thoughts? Are you open enough? So obviously we are not. Okay, so upon death we meet this great light that seems to be going to expose all of what we are inside. Okay, so of course we shy away from this great light, this light source. And what Edward Salim Michael said is that the mind will quickly look for a form, a material form to hide inside, a tangible form, so that we need not face this great light. Okay, so therefore in Buddhism, the Buddha taught that we can take on any form, in order for us to learn, to be truthful, to be open, to the effect where we have nothing to hide, and to let go of it totally. Okay, so contemplating death is a very good meditation. So most of us meditate, like I shared earlier, with breath, and then to open our choiceless awareness, to allow anything to come in and out, without choosing, without pushing away, without grabbing onto them. Okay, when we My teacher from Deep Spring, Barbara Brodsky, Aaron, they said, we solidify our world of experience when we cling on to things, okay? So we're greedy for something, we love this food, we love our child so much, we cling on, cannot let go. So we make them into object, into our object, into I am that person's, possessor or that thing, me, I, mine. So we solidify our experience. Or we hate something so much, such as fear, then we push it away. Then by pushing away or ignoring it, again we solidify that experience. And when we solidify these experiences, they become us, and we find it very hard to work with them. Okay? Right? So for me, I find that death meditation is very helpful. It is not usually it's not a usual meditation subject, but my favorite in Hindu saint, right? So although I practice the Buddhist path, I love books from the Christian contemplative. I love the Christian contemplation on love, and I love the Hindu contemplation on the mind, as I do the Buddhist ones. And I love Ramana Maharishi, who passed away in 1950. He was a great Indian silent saint, and he realized enlightenment through contemplating death. And I think in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's contemplation of death as there is in Theravada tradition. I'm not sure about the Mahayana Zen tradition, right? But I know the Zen tradition mirrors the Theravada traditions a lot in terms of daily mindfulness. So anyway, so I fear death because I'm one of those people, like Phra Ajahn says, who is very short-sighted and have a great fear of death, believe in annihilation. So I started doing death contemplation. I started visualizing my own death. And like what Ajahn Amaro said, Ajahn Amaro is an abbot of Amaravati. He said that it is useful to visualize the doctor telling you you're going to die in a week's time, in a month's time, to train your mind to get used to it. Okay, so I'm only starting to do that, and also to experience what death really is. What is death? I think this is a great question posed by Ramana Maharishi. When he was just 16, he asked this question: what is death? Why is he so afraid of death? And that inspired me to do death contemplation meditation. How do I do it? I kind of follow his cue. I visualize it. I imagine my body going stiff, the breath leaving my body, and the body turning cold. And as it turns cold, it decomposes. It gets eaten up by maggots, worms, whatnot. And the feelings leaving the body, the thoughts leaving the feeling. Come to think of it, it's not very much different from falling asleep, yeah. So Ayya Khema said, isn't it strange? We don't feel threatened when we fall asleep. Why should we feel threatened when we die? So as I did all of that, what was surprising is that it was actually a very pleasant experience. Of course, when in real life death comes, when there's pain, I really don't know how, but I'm trying my best to practice with my mind now. And the surprising thing was that death isn't so bad. Letting go, like what the Buddha said, isn't so bad. Letting go is actually very pleasant. Okay, it's actually quite blissful. Or I like the Christian word surrendering. Surrendering to space, to what is. Because space isn't empty. Space contains all the elements. Space contains all kinds of things. And space, as I shared earlier, is not outside of you. It pervades your body too. You know, when I was young, I played the coin spirit, or Ouija board, okay, with friends. And you can call any spirits and they'll appear from space. So consciousness itself is a thing we can't see, but it's there, as are the elements. Okay, so that's all I would like to share on bite-sized mindfulness. It's not that bite-sized today, it's nearly 30 minutes talk. because I just came back from 5 weeks meditation, not exactly a retreat, but living with the nuns in the US, and it helped me a lot to learn how to live harmoniously with others, to serve others. I'm not saying that I never had negative thoughts arise in my mind. I did, especially when I had PMS. I just didn't act on them, okay? Because if you act on them, then you have an experience of negative merit. Alright, so that's all from me. Any questions, please post in the chat box here. And again, you don't need to believe what I say here, but take it with an attitude of, is it true? Let me contemplate on it. Alright, so that's all from me. Thank you very much.